to help push back against some of the main ways that buff enjoyers are looking to make a play. It was trying to put, I believe, a duo lane on the outside there. Going to be altered as now it's going to be Ivy brought together with, I believe, the pocket, but that leaves Paradox alone versus Infernus and Shiv.
Yeah, they're going to have to consider maybe assisting this Abrams. I don't know if you can, like, sustain pressure on this lane. I find like Lash is one of those more annoying ones for poking your head in the early game. So we'll see if they actually try to shift off this. I mean, Geist is going to need some assistance, so we'll see Infernus shifting across there. Shiv always a reliable solo lane, I feel like. It's very rare to see him struggle in the early game. And Paradox at least has that get out of jail free card with the walls, with the slow from the kinetic carbine. So I think it's a lane that I'd expect Shiv to farm better, but not one that I expected to kill him.
It does look like we're going to get a quick rotation, making the center duos once again, so a 1-2-2-1 composition. And I'm not surprised that this is the meta game that has been decided basically at all elos of play. I think that having that central access for roamers is incredibly important. And while you don't necessarily see anyone crossing over from the likes of Broadway to York, the possibility of it occurring does mean that you have to be a little bit more considerate about the engages you're taking in the far sides.
Yeah, I like the fact they forced Ivy all the way back to base, right? Like, the value of that is, like, Ivy's a little bit under-farmed when she returns, and the reason that's important is that this is kind of a grenade and spam lane, but speaking of which, one of the grenaders themselves gets taken down. It looks like it's actually going to be 2 kills in different locations here, so nice strike to open this laning phase for buff enjoyers.
And it looks like I spoke too soon. It was actually going to be a duo-v-duo lane there on the far side in Park for both Cabal and buff enjoyers. Regardless, buff enjoyers happy with the way those compositions were playing out, able to pick up 2 of those kills early on in this one, means that in general they got quite a bit of momentum to start things off. But this is probably also the MOBA where I think individual kills matter the least. What matters a lot more is who's able to get that first crack at the tower, who's able to blow that up and take it down. And so from there, I do think that things are going to remain relatively even as we do see about a 1k lead over to buff enjoyers in regards to the soul count. But any more kills from here on out for Cabal could spell disaster for sure.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting as well. This whole idea, like I mentioned, forcing Ivy back to base, and then that feels like you've got a soul advantage for the XP, but the cost of health just made it not worthwhile. We saw how quickly Ivy was able to surge souls without even getting the kill first when they returned to lane. It unlocked that second ability and gave that pressure. So it does feel like sometimes you just don't get that kill. It was never worth the health loss unless you can turn it into a tower push or a second hero low. But when you're kind of trickling 1-2, it doesn't feel great in these situations. That feels painful. That's meant to be one of the more tanky and difficult to kill heroes, but you see how disgusting the Viscous combos can be. Pocket, in the meantime, is not loving life. Dots are coming through. The burn damage enough to ruin his day.
Great stuff from the Infernus and the Lady Geist, able to chip away from afar and land that killing blow when they have the opportunity to approach versus the Pocket, who has now fallen pretty far behind the curve alongside Ivy, who's also simultaneously in trouble, having to go all the way back towards the Walker and still can't get out of dodge. More burn down damage, and Cabal are eating good on that side of Greenwich.
Infernus is getting fat and stacked, and that's never a good sign for these early game pressures. We already mentioned a few of these heroes don't like having to deal with that. In particular, I think you're going to see Pocket struggle going up against that. It could also make Haze's life a living hell. So definitely need to find a way of resetting this pressure. Paradox is going to come in, looking to actually counterattack into this, but nice switcheroo, able to shift to the other side. The wall is forced out, not good enough to protect. Paradox down, and you have just continued to feed the beast that is Infernus.
And that is a peak Paradox gameplay pre-ult. I think they did a really good job using all their abilities, but it just doesn't matter. The Soul's Diff is a little bit too much to bear, and Cabal is happy to build up this damage dealer who can work as an initiator for that team, especially as Mo and Krill has kind of fallen by the wayside and out of the picture. Now, the question is the matchup going between the top killer of Cabal versus buff enjoyers, because Haze is eating good right now and simultaneously can turn a fight on the head in an instant.
But you got to think who's going to be more useful in the other game, right? Like for Haze, it's about how am I setting things up, and I have seen some signs of beauty here, right? Viscous for one utilizes that well. I also think as we get a little bit late in the game, Abrams is going to thrive off of those with the charges. So Dagger can definitely have some presence, but it does feel in a way it's maybe easier for the Infernus to wreak havoc in these earlier mid-game engagements.
I would definitely agree with that. I think that for the time being, Cabal need to capitalize them. The question is, can they do that? Right now, one of the lane textures that is kind of worrying me for their overall outlook in this game, even though they're ahead on souls, is the fact that we're getting consistent pushes, even in lanes that are kind of 1v2, especially on that far right in Park. What we saw was Abrams just kind of happy to take 2v1s for a while, and they were still able to catch all the waves and in fact push up and do a little bit of chip damage.
Oh. It's like we're getting ready for a party with Lash. Not able to get the grab there, though. Able to dodge the stun. But the follow-up is going to cause pain here. Tries to roll away. But Listic able to take him down. All that, and they do not get the Viscous. He's still rolling around with the party. Infernus with the rotation will be good enough to even it into a one-on-one. And with the amount of heroes here, I think we're about to see the beginning of a push.
I don't think anyone really wants to take this big fight, but they feel like it is necessary to do so. Cabal wants to capitalize on this moment and look for an angle. Mo and Krill going deep. And there's the rest of the team to follow through on it. It looks like for the time being, Abrams is just going to give up this turret. And I think that's the correct call here, as now Pocket is looking to fight their way out of this one. Gonna get blown up here, as now Haze also going worryingly low here. Could lead to an opening for Cabal to just capitalize and take this one away. Paradox is actually going to be the one to get popped, as it looks like Haze has gotten to safety behind the base. But now it's all up to the Ivy to resist this three-man push upon the purple lane.
This Infernus is growing in his problems, right? Like, I'm looking at it, and when I watch these health bars go down, you'd think that actually it's Cabal that has the pocket. You'd think that's an Affliction ult. These dots are stacking up hard, and I think what was key about that rotation is how it interrupted Haze's flow, right? It came to a lane. The problem emerged there. Now the charge in. They're trying to address this Infernus issue, but it feels like get out of jail free card with a runaway. Not able to get far enough out. Parry wasted there, and they addressed the issue. The elephant in the room, Lefa taken down.
And I really thought that that was going to be a pure Cabal match getting out of that one yet again, but even the mobility that the Infernus was able to provide wasn't enough to answer back against the irresistible force of this Abrams. And now I think that this tank is becoming a real problem. Buff Enjoyers have this great leverage by which to play off of, either entering into a fight with ultimate or more. Visc is going to get picked off here, though. Cabal finally able to claw a little bit back, especially in the form of the Mo and Krill starting to crest towards that 4K mark, but will it be enough? Right now, Gold about perfectly even between these two teams, as we see pushes on either side, even out around the center of these lanes. Everybody rotating perfectly at this point in time is showing the peak of this Deadlock gameplay.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some issues on the side of Buff and Joy when it comes to ults, right? We just saw Cabal rather. Combustion does get used there. They have still got these low cooldown ults, but now they haven't got that big reset for a team fight at a point where Abrams is about to get the slam. Goo is at least not going to be there. The Goo Ball is still on cooldown, but I think you are now going to see Buff and Joys looking for an engagement off the back of the power of Abrams.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about how Abrams isn't necessarily a main initiator, but rather someone who comes in secondly to add to the disruption and add to the takedowns. But I think that here, because of how far up they are in souls, they need to be that initiator, and then Viscous can kind of be the secondary coming through in Goo Ball form. Right now, I'm interested to see whether or not Buff and Joyce can get some more souls on that character and really, therefore, define a front line for them for any more big team fights.
Feels like we've got a lot of presence from Cabal in the lane that doesn't really offer up anything generous to target here. So I think they are just really kind of leveraging, protecting this Final Guardian, not giving that territory over for free. Things are calming down though, and I don't want to, like, as we get into that mid game, you know, is it too early to start talking about those big team fights? Is it likely we're going to see Cabal just trying to spread the map, stretch it wide still?
I don't think it is too early to talk about that, I'll be honest here. Pigeon, one of the big things to note is the fact that sometimes you just got to take a fight by necessity. We've seen that a few times throughout the course of this game already, and therefore, considerations have to be made about rotations across the map to answer one or the other. Ivy, I think, is going to be a big player on that front for Buff and Joy's. Cabal, though, has mobility of their own, with Wraith able to traipse large amounts of distance, and as now we do get into one of these big fights, we're going to see how many people come to the fray. Mo and Krill popped early in this one, and that is great stuff for Buff and Joy to continue to try to force this one. Looking for the approach. Wraith on the far side, looking for a flank angle, but unfortunately, while that happens, Shiv and Lady Geist are both going to go down in exchange for the Abrams, and that means that Buff and Joyers are going to ride high coming off this one, looking to mop up everybody else. That's a Lash taken down too, and the only saving grace here is that there's no mid-boss to take right now.
Yeah, and the biggest saving grace was the fact that Infernus was nowhere near to assist. They timed that intentionally and perfectly, and this is something to always keep an eye out at a high level, right? right? Like, look for what is happening on the map. Who is where? If you understand that someone is causing all your problems, play far away from them. And I think that is exactly what was done so phenomenally well by Buff Enjoyers. It's still an issue with the Infernus, though. I think this is the time where you want to try to find a solo pick on him, but he's doing such a great job of staying away. Pocket, in the meantime, never able to get away here. Mo and Krill just looking to pressure up, and I'm wondering, at what stage do you just have to maybe take a deep dive, try to find this Infernus, because his team's doing a good job of making a lot of space while he farms everywhere safe.
Yeah, that's certainly the case. You look at the soul share, and that last fight didn't really represent the fact that Cabal are happily back at even versus Buff Enjoyers, and a lot of that just comes down to the fact that this Infernus is doing so much. That being said, this is a very lopsided distribution of souls on both sides of the coin, and so Haze is similarly going to have to be brought into that conversation as someone to be protected and to be leveraged on for Buff Enjoyers.
I'm kind of curious, like, what's more value on low net worth, right? Is it going to be the Moan Krill, or is it going to be maybe the Ivy here? Stun coming out. Looks like they're going to try to pursue the target. A lift up in the air, but the Viscous always on point with the cube to save. Charger is going to be able to slice and dice, trying to bring them low enough to get the kill, but Shiv already dead. Means it's going to be a bail coming out from Cabal. Although, second wave coming in now, maybe a recommitment. Moan Krill's going to be low. Disarm's going to be there to buy a little bit of time up against the pocket, but it's not going to be enough to keep them alive. They are down. Infernus somehow gets picked up as well.
No.
And it's all starting to backfire for Cabal.
Yeah, they were the ones who initiated that second wave of the fight like you were talking about there, Pigeon, and what the outcome of that is all of a sudden you see the kneecapping of the Infernus. Now, they still have a lot of souls to play with, but the fact of the matter is we're not really seeing Cabal actually make team fights built around this character work in their favor. And so because that's the case, while that is happening, it's just Haze getting further ahead, able to knock on the door of one of those walkers and then some.
God, it feels sad to try and use telekinesis on an Ivy like this. So that's one less cooldown to have to worry about. Nice kind of tank of the rotation. Doesn't give his life. But yeah, the difference with the Haze and the Infernus is I think the key factor here, right? Like Infernus, maybe a little bit confident, overconfident of how good the lane went. Showing up these team fights far earlier than maybe they're able to. And I think it's the discombobulate nature as well, right? Like, if you get those longer fights where it's poke and prod, that's where Infernus feels really strong, right? He sustains himself off the deeps. But when it is going in deep hard, one kill after another, snowballing like that, we usually see the Infernuses just crumble.
Yeah, it becomes the ultimate target for a team, and unfortunately he's not someone that really benefits from that attention, but ultimately what are you going to do? The man's on fire. He is 100% going to grab the attention of everybody coming on in, zoom in at Naruto run style, although that's another thing you've ruined for me, by the way. It's not only the opening to Attack on Titan, but it's also that apparently people are saying it's the Demon Slayer run now.
It is the Demon Slayer. Yeah, I mean, at Dynamo Major, but we play kind of not that well now, I'm afraid. You know, Team Spirit running out, doing it to that song, I think is now, that's where the zoom is going to go, right? I'm just trying to move the times. I'm a dad. I'm getting a little bit older. Like, if you don't adapt to the horde, all right, they leave you out in the cold.
Scary things to know. And I don't know. I think I'm going to hold to my old ways until I am dragged kicking and screaming into this new world. Back on the game side of things, we do have mid-boss up and available, but we do have even pushes on either side to make it so with everybody well distributed across the map, I don't think we're going to get anything crazy for the time being. Right now, it's just a matter of who's going to be able to find an individual pick. Lash venturing dangerously close here to both the pocket and the Ivy. Looks like they may have the alley-oop of the Lady Geist there, but now we do see the recoalescence of Buff Enjoyers jamming 4 now down a lane with the Viscous and Abrams joining forces.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of wasted time with that rotation. Buff Enjoyers were kind of perfectly extending in to reach for that Geist. But, you know, the Lash, great scouting coming out, manages to jump over the top and buys that space for Geist to get away. But as you said, things are starting to reach around that mid area of the map. And that's where Cabal, they're still in a stage where a lot of this feels kind of gank and spanky. Maybe if the Lash is able to get a good ult off, that'll give them the follow-up into Infernus. I feel like this is we're at a point where whoever strikes first should be able to strike last in these fights.
I would hope to see that as well. I don't want someone to speculatively pull the trigger on something that can define the course of the game. I think that you need the utmost confidence either from the Cabal or Buff Enjoyers that they will be able to take the 6v6 and come out on top. And so therefore, with nobody I think really having enough of a Souls lead to make that a 100% fact, people are playing a little bit more respectfully for the time being, and I do think that,
making a move.
once again, it's maybe a fight of either trying to pick or a fight of necessity that will change that. So right now we do start to see Buff Enjoyers venture deep into enemy territory here, but once again, Cabal just gonna back off.
They're doing a really good job of dodging the issue. The only issue I'm taking with it is that Haze is still farming at every given time. Nothing they've done has drawn her away from that objective. We are seeing Infernus at least try to contest that, but it kind of feels like she's getting a bit more of the mid-creep camp. So like statistically, like percentage-wise, I'd say it's like a 60-40 split on the left side, favoring Haze in terms of who's getting farm.
And you see that reflected in the souls total here. Not a huge gap, about 2,000 between the Haze and the Infernus, but that is going to be enough to turn a fight on the head. One more item like that, and really, as you said, it's also just a matter of the way that Buff Enjoyers have kind of put this map, not into stasis, but have at least continued to approach it for the past few minutes. It means that Haze is going to continue to be able to build their souls at a higher rate than Lefa on this Infernus, and I'm a little bit worried about what that means for Cabal, given that they are the ones trailing in terms of the souls lead anyway.
Yeah, another thing that I'm noticing is Sharky's just having a hard time this time around, right? The Wraith just hasn't really felt impactful, and you're seeing why. I think Buff Enjoy's really ramped up the reaction to these telekinesis. They're essentially baiting them. They're goading them. They're telling them to use it, and every time he's taking that bait. So I think maybe you need to switch things up, try to initiate with the Moan Krill, but how confident do you feel about that when your Moan Krill is by far the lowest net worth in the game?
And Moan Krill just isn't able to approach freely. It's not one of those characters that can all of a sudden arrive on top of someone. You need good positioning, or you need other people on your team to get you there. Otherwise, you're going to get melted in an instant, given that you haven't had the souls necessarily to build a huge stat pool. As right now, we do have a big fight starting. Infernus picked early in this one means that Buff Enjoyers once again are going to be able to bask in the spoils of a deep push into enemy territory here, spearheaded by the Paradox, the Abrams, and the Ivy all the way on that far left side, as Pocket and Paradox are now going to get assisted as Abrams is looking for a flank out of the Lady Geist. Right now, it is the Walker Besieged that'll be the focus of the Golden Team, but I think the Amber Hand are super happy with how things are going right now.
I don't like Cabal's position right now. You can see the Lash is fishing in there. Maybe a little bit of an overextension coming through from him. He's going to try to throw out the ult, just toss them down, but this is
Teleport.
not a I'm going to end you. This is a please do not end me ultimate. Hunt is on, and I think he is going to get found, so he needs some backup, some assistance coming in fast here. Pocket, in the meantime, has been brought low. Moan Krill's going to initiate, looking for the jump in, the stun control. Not going to be lasting long enough, though. The slam coming in. Geist is going to be brought down, and it looks like Abrams should be able to run out the other side with barely any HP.
Paradox has died, though. It's a 1-for-1 so far in this extended fight, as once again, everybody's going to approach. This is the big fight of necessity that we were talking about, as now it is going to be the viscous, laid-out Cabal, bringing it back as the Haze, the most fed member of the Buff Enjoyers, has been taken out as well. And what a shove into enemy territory. Perfectly positioned here to take a walker, and perhaps more. The mid-boss sits tantalizingly in the middle of the map, as now it's only the Abrams left alive. Finally, the Shiv going to go down on a little bit of an overchase here, but there's still enough members of the Sapphire Flame available for them to take this massive buff.
And what an insane turn of events, right? I basically wrote that Lash off as do not send a rescue party, will not find the body, right? It looked like he had overextended there, overstayed his welcome. He even tries to escape into the enemy team, but rotation comes in clutch. That was formulated, planned perfectly big for Cabal, and they will get the big reward here, going in for the Revitalizer, or Rejuvenator rather. Swap's gonna come through. Wait!
Oh my god, the seal! Buff Enjoyers! They take the Rejuvenator, and Cabal are getting wiped!
Big problems now. What looked like a turn of events, looked like a turnaround point. Buff Enjoyers now ready to surge forward. Only Ivy without that buff to work with. Geist is going to be plowed into the afterlife. Shiv, last one left standing far enough away. But now that Walker, a prime follow-up target that Buff Enjoyers will happily take.
Things continue to turn. The table has not stopped rotating here, Pigeon. What an insane showing. A hero play from the Abrams, leveraged now into the Rejuvenator, and a massive push upon a wide open Cabal base. Multiple base Guardians are going to drop down, and this Abrams is an escape artist, and we've seen it time and time again. They're going to move their way out, as now Viscous going a little bit low here versus the Wraith. They may still be able to rotate their way out of this one, especially with the distraction coming through from the Pocket.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm impressed actually by the Paradox's impact, right? Sometimes it's a hero that feels like, you know, it falls off as the game goes on, but this value around the Rejuvenator, that was absolutely phenomenal. That swap that just led to all of that. I mean, it's a threat that's always posed, and the thing I love as well is when you're not using it for those type of moments, it's such a low cooldown ability, it's just a fishing ult, right? It's kind of your counter action in comparison to things like Moan Krill, which is like a 60-second stun. All of a sudden, if you think about it, in the right hands and the right format, that swap is also a stun.
There's just so much that you could do with this character. I really think that this is one of the highest skill expression characters in the game, and we're beginning to see the fact that buff enjoyers have leveraged every last little bit of this toolkit to beautiful effect here. Now, Cabal aren't necessarily out of it just yet, but this is the biggest soul gap that we've seen between these two teams so far in this game, cresting almost towards 20,000 in favor of buff enjoyers. And that means that any more of those miracle plays that led to Cabal initiating that mid-boss to begin with could fall apart in an instant now, because these 6v6s are just so much more difficult to take even with favorable position.
Looks like buff enjoyers are going to go hunting. Nice dive in, able to find it, and the Geist gets melted. That's how you guarantee no swap.
I don't think a swap would have mattered in that situation. The multi-man rundown, buff enjoyers are going to happily enjoy another takedown of one of these walkers as well, continuing to unlock these flex slots. They are now aiming towards take down the base of Cabal, and once this happens, I just don't think that Cabal are using a composition that can hold a base that has multiple waves crashing into them. As right now we do see the big initiation pocket blown up early in this one. Mo and Krill working as the initiator is going to die for doing so, but Paradox is taken out early in this fight, and that means I think buff enjoyers have to go on the retreat, trying to cluster around, looking for a vulnerable member of Cabal. They set their sides on the Wraith and they take them down, and it looks like Shiv may be soon to follow. They will finally get back around to the inside of their base and heal back up, but while that is happening, it's buff enjoyers once again just laying a waste to everything across the map. And now Lash with a deep engage is going to try to turn things back around, but they just donate more kill and more times over to the side of buff enjoyers, who are happy to try to end the game here and now.
I mean, it's crazy the way that plays out as well, right? The Haze essentially just dispersing the bullet dance so early, not on a high-value target, only getting one, right? Not a high-value situation. You thought for a second that Cabal would be able to hold, but the beauty of it was the fact that they were able to take out the front line as the biggest threat. So this Infernus is meant to be your powerhouse, you're carrying this game, had no front line. He had no way of trying to ego chow these engagements, and now we find ourselves in a situation where Cabal are one slip-up, one mistake away from losing game one.
And that 20k gold lead has turned into a 30k gold lead off the back of that fight. And I think you could tell just from how I was casting that fight, Pigeon, that buff enjoyers have a way better sense of how to approach these 6v6s than I do. Because my goodness, the fact that they didn't turn tail and ran, but rather dug their heels in and found a new way to pivot and turn that fight into their favor shows their brilliance. It shows why they're here in the grand finals.
Now, this is very important. There's a lot of money that hasn't been spent on the side of buff enjoyers. And we always talk about this idea of soul worth, but what's the effective worth? What have you actually got in your hands? How much is actually just not committed? This is probably the best time for Cabal to try and counterattack while buff enjoyers are backing up to try and spend those resources.
It looks like they're going to have the space with which to do so, though. I think that right now they're perfectly happy to let Cabal take a little bit more space, and in return, they're going to be able to buy up anything that they need. Now, one dynamic across the map to keep in mind is the fact that Cabal doesn't really have anything to play for, even if they do get a big team fight that goes in their favor. Now, a full 6-man wipe could lead to all these walkers going down, and Cabal desperately needs to start opening up those flex slots, but I think the dynamic that is really favoring buff enjoyers, just in regards to how things currently stand, is also that there's no mid-boss up. There's no way to all of a sudden get this massive buff that turns things around in an instant. So there's some wiggle room here. Buff enjoyers can fish for kills, and I think one more pick is all that is necessary for that enemy patron to fall.
Looks like they're fishing right now. Smoke bomb's going to come out. Haze is hunting here, and it looks like the Wraith might be the prime target. Tries to TP away. It's going to be a dagger miss here. Stun follow-up. It's going to be used by Wraith to try and defend, just to try and get out here. They're in full retreat, but they might not be quick enough. Jump in by the pocket, brings them low, and the perfect two-slapper here. Wraith and Infernus out for 45.
And those are the top two people that you'll want to take down if you want to encroach upon the base, because what's left? Active player is so far behind at this point. They're a little bit more than a candlehead. Samson Company just can't do enough to actually just stop the entire Amber wave from encroaching upon this vulnerable patron. as we do see Shiv looking for a flank angle here, trying to get deep behind the
sleeve.
backline to assassinate a squishy, but I think right now it has to be Lash getting to safety. That has to be the focus of Cabal, and while that happens, Krill is in fact going to go down, and there's just not enough time left to save the Sapphire Patron as
they get kills. They do it very fast, and then they shove in for objectives. But we've seen the game of cat and mouse constantly. Like, I don't feel like
behind them coming out of that downtown showdown #1 as the victors.
And here we go. We're hopping into it. Game number 2. Buff Enjoyers match point already there. They could lock it into, but Cabal looking strong. The Kelvin gets through, and it is in their hands. Are we gonna get that free game series? Let's find out.
Right now, things starting pretty standard. Notably, we are back to not having any rotation shenanigans super early in the laning phase, as was the case in game number 1.5, I guess is how we're writing this down. Solo lanes on the outside right now. Looks like Abrams has rotated over, and this is that dynamic I was talking about in the draft phase. Viscous, I think, is pretty happy sitting pretty alone, and that allows for Abrams to start drawing pressure across multiple lanes. Now, it's in fact Shiv trying to navigate over to the far side into Park, as Yamato is now going to replace Abrams in the center left lane, or center right lane.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. Historically, we've seen the Pocket just laying up against the Yamato because you ruin their life. But in this game, you're forced to actually be on the Bebop lane. The reason is if you get grabbed in, you can at least dodge the bomb damage and then stop that scaling. So I think they've made the right call, but it means we might actually finally have a game where Yamato feels like a hero early on.
I feel like we're just jinxing this poor character at this point, and everybody who is saddled
and I'm
playing
fine
them.
with that. I've died to too many in my pub game. Yeah, Yamato is going to slam dunk this. Caster curses aren't a thing.
You know, I'm actually kind of there with you. As a Wraith player, I do think Yamato going invincible is one of the most agonizing things to have to deal with when you're dumping cards into them. And
right?
Just,
like, I don't want to buy
budging.
a silence. I want to buy more DPS.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, luckily I have evolved away from pure spirit stack on that character, but as we now do see the opening shots fired in this game, Cabal have taken down that Bebop early, and that is not something you see very often during the early laning phase. Wraith also gonna drop as well, and this is a huge lead actually being developed super early on for the team coming out of the Amber Hand. That's 2K up right now versus Buff Enjoyers.
And this is the bully lane I was expecting, right? Like, you've got two issues as Bebop. Either they're going to jump on me before I can hook one of them, or I'm going to hook the Pocket, and it's going to be completely pointless because half my DPS will just get blocked by a stupid little satchel that floats there. So I think they've got the right read here, and this has some threat factor to it. I could see potential rotations, like Krill on lane against Paradox. Let's say Pocket shows up, which that rotation from central to left is very simple. You could easily just see this snowball into a 2-lane advantage quickly for Cabal.
That was the Abrams getting dropped as well. Buff Enjoyers having a lot of their traditional strong points stymied early in this game number 2. And therefore, I do want to see them rally a little bit here, maybe start playing a little bit more flexy with some rotations, especially in the form of that Abrams, who is going to try to occupy this far right lane for the time being. But they need to turn that into kills. They need to turn that into pressure across the lanes, because right now, playing respectively versus a team like Cabal means that you're accelerating the game to a pace that the Cabal loves to play at. Those stomp-oriented playstyles where things are over by the 20-minute mark.
Yeah, and you know, usually you like Wraith on these inner lanes because you can just walk the catwalk, you know, you can just flaunt your stuff and gun everyone down. But when you're up against this kind of double wallop lane with double grenade, right, you've got Barrage plus the Frost Grenade, you don't feel confident standing there ever. So you're probably going to see have to play much further back. I think if they can't fish a few kills off the back of hooks, that lane is going to have to be an issue addressed from some of their teammates.
Well, good news on the soul count right now. Yamato is currently the most fed on Buff Enjoyer's side, but I think that's a little bit more because everybody else has fallen at least once so far. Do see a brief trade there between them and the Shiv. Yamato just able to back off behind the Viscous for the time being. Things remaining relatively stable, as unfortunately the Abrams is going to get dropped again.
It's becoming a bit of a liability here, right? Like, Abrams, you usually pick him because he can't easily just drop like this in the lane, but so far, like, especially considering the situation, like being up against the Haze, you think you'd be a bit more confident, a bit more safe, but that's a worrisome sign. I'm starting to think that the only lane that might be able to kind of recover the start of this for Buff Enjoyers is going to be that inner right one. But when I look at it, I'm confident about a Viscous. I'm not really sure what Yamato can do. Hook's going to come in, uppercut's going to be there, but oh look, I'm just going to make a path and leave.
Yeah, and while Kelvin does take half health, that is still a living Kelvin, and the sustain from Grenade is going to be painful to deal with. Big bullet dance here is going to trade this one back. Pocket is going to die, but Yamato simultaneously is also going to fall, and because Shiv is able to inch their way out, that's ultimately just going to be an even trade. Kelvin in trouble, though. Will be able to knock out the Wraith as a parting shot as Bebop is going to deliver a killing blow. Kelvin goes down. And that means that once again, we are back in contention here. Buff and Joyce have closed that gold gap and they remain relatively stable. Abrams, though, maybe a little bit too deep here. They saw a low Shiv and they will unfortunately fall again, chasing deep into enemy territory.
And this is the bane factor of an Abrams pick I find quite often. I mentioned before that Shiv feels like a feast or famine hero. Abrams can sometimes be an even bigger extreme. If you fall behind a little bit, you're meant to be a frontliner. You're meant to be the big scary tank. But with this type of net worth, you are just a kitten that needs to be put down.
I do think that there is this misconception in low elo particularly that Abrams is just an idiotic stat check character. But the fact of the matter is, you still do need stats in order to operate on this character. And right now, given that Abrams is 1,000 gold behind even that Moan Krill that has struggled so traditionally in so many drafts, that makes me very worried about their outcomes later in this one. As once again, we see that value of Pocket into this composition. Cabal is able to shrug off any amount of bomb damage coming through from the Bebop hook. And Pocket is going to walk that one right out.
Yeah, it's just a painful life, right? Like, I'm kind of curious what the thought really was with this Bebop pick, and oh no. Well, the Hyper Beam
blocked by bushes somehow.
What is that?
Got it!
He
oh my goodness!
What a sinker there to get the kill in the pocket.
Oh, that's so frustrating. I think that so much of your mental stack whenever Bebop laser comes out is devoted to get out of the way of the laser, and I feel that right at that point, Pocket thought they were home free. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that there's a lot more in the tool set of that killer robot, and that does mean that Buff and Joyce are going to get one or two back here. Infernus, meanwhile, though, happy to jam all the way up against a Viscous and a Yamato. They can't really do a whole lot to contest this 3-stack that Cabal have going.
I mean, I'm inspired by that Bebop. You know, like, so there's heroes in MOBAs where they are all confidence. If you miss and you miss and you miss, or even if you hit and you don't get a kill, you deflate. You become demoralized. But one hook is all it sometimes takes to start going on a roll. Speaking of rolls, Viscous is going to have to come to an end there. At least gets the trade out up against the Infernus, but the hunt is now on and more punishments coming in. Mo and Krill able to get the connect, and Abrams, do I even want to look at how many deaths that now is?
Yeah, it's very unfortunate that Buff Enjoyers are unable to just get clean one-for-ones, because I think from behind you are perfectly happy taking those, especially if they go on to some of these characters that are lagging behind on the kill count. But Cabal are doing a great job of capitalizing and surrounding and conquering. They are picking up multiple kills for the price of one, and in kind, look at how far ahead the likes of Shiv and Moan Krill are. These are two characters that so far we haven't really seen been brought into a carry role, so I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do in this mid game, but for the time being, there's still towers that need to be taken.
They're forcing a lot of reaction coming out of Buff and Joyce to try and hold this area. Infernus with the poke. I mean, Viscous can't really front line. They know he hasn't got the ball to work with. In the meantime, Bebop having to back up here, poking as he can. Can he actually find the kill, though, is the big question mark. Moan Krill is going to be brought down. Pocket able to slide away from this. There's going to be the combustion follow-up, and they will connect that kill into Viscous. In the meantime, though, Pocket somehow slides his way out of a grave.
That being said, Kelvin not going to be so lucky. Now it's going to be the Bebop going down. Once again, trades almost cresting towards even, but there are those tantalizing little bits that Buff and Joyce could do in order to really put things into their favor, and they have been denied that opportunity. That being said, look at the soul count. Things are stabilizing here. The problem is, you look at the map texture and you see how much more of a push the Amber Hand has versus the Sapphire Flame, and I think once again, I'm still very comfortable in saying that Cabal have a great opportunity to take a single team fight and put this game away.
Yeah, Buff and Joyce do have the benefit of a Yamato probably feeling more present and able in a big team fight than a Haze early on, right? Yeah, we talk about bullet dance, how threatening it is, but you need a few items first. So I like the fact that we're actually seeing Haze play up onto the enemy side and take some camps away to try and extend that likely lead they're now building over the carry of Buff and Joyce.
Yeah, Buff Enjoyers, I think, need to not fall into the position that the Cabal was in last time, actually, where they are able to hang on the total soul count, but in turn, they simply do not have the setup across the map with which to confidently push up and actually match the farm numbers that Cabal are doing, though. And that means that Haze could quickly get online and get to that point where they are a major threat like you're talking about. But for the time being, Buff Enjoyers certainly still have an angle by which they can all of a sudden bring this game back in their favor, and therefore they can look to roam undefeated 2-0 to a finisher here in Deadlock Core number 2.
Looks like Hyper Beam was forced out of Bebop, so a little bit of time to wait for that to come a cooldown. It is going to be a roll by Viscous. Shiv trying to get away from this, and the telekinesis gets wasted. So two ultimates that you need for kills now not available.
Yeah, that ult economy going to hurt just a little bit. Buff Enjoyers now have to play defensively, and I think that the Cabal understand that this is the case. Once this Shiv gets healed back up, I think it's open season for them to look for something. And now, any big fight that goes totally in their favor could lead not only into just the souls and the pressure that comes from that, but also the fact that the mid-boss has spawned past this 10-minute mark.
And look at Wraith's position on the map. Backs entirely up. Doesn't want to be anywhere near the front line because they don't even now have that, oh, you thought you were ganking me, I'm now going to kill you ultimate. So kind of a scary situation here. And I think we're probably likely to see a play towards Viscous as well. Yes, he can save one person with the cube, but he hasn't got that free get out himself with the ball for about, what, another, I'd say, 30 seconds.
Looks like we are getting a clustering around this soul urn. And this is quite the roundabout route that we're seeing the Cabal take in order to try to deposit this. There's just too many people of Buff Enjoyers in the lane. So I think they may just have to drop this and try to push off Buff Enjoyers, maybe catch them unawares that they've dropped the Soul Urn. But right now, it is going to be a pick for the Sapphire Flame that I think is going to further delay any plans to actually deposit that. And with the Shiv gone, this fight's a whole lot less valuable for them to take. Buff Enjoyer is going to try to pull the trigger here. Abrams, though, already taken worryingly low. Good stuff by Cabal to try to stabilize this fight back out. And the Bebop going down early in this one means that all of a sudden, we are right back to even as the fight continues to cluster around Parkway. Approach Haze looking for something. Looks like for the time being the fight is going to lag out just a little bit here. Haze taking a little bit too much damage, I think, to go for a full engage, and so things are going to right once again, as now we do see a double push by the Amber Hand down not only Park but also Broadway.
Yeah, it's sick by Buff Enjoyers. They do manage to get that drop off in the end, right? So I think that was well played around the issue. Another really big deal for them, they didn't have to waste the slam for Abrams. Yes, he's having a hard game, 4 deaths, not that rich, but that stun can really be a big turner. So love the fact that they keep that big ultimate available to them. In the meantime, we are going to see Haze starting to get access to those big camps, and we are starting to reach that point where her farm can spike. But it's pleasing for once to see a Yamato feeling intact and not beaten after the laning phase.
Yeah, Yamato is not only feeling intact, but honestly, I think that she's feeling exceptionally strong to start enacting her game plan. The well-distributed souls on the side of Cabal does mean that their teamfight is going to be vicious, but I think Yamato can start pushing a lane, draw pressure on their side, and in many cases walk out unless you're sending multiple people from the Cabal over to deal with them. And it's not only the Yamato you have to work on right now. This Wraith has all of a sudden steamrolled ahead to a 15k soul share, and that means that overall Buff Enjoyers is ahead.
Shiv just ran into Wraith here. She's trying to run away. She will get out of there. I thought she might try to go for the solo, but I guess out of all the targets, Shiv is just obnoxious, right? Considering the delay on the stun, I think it still comes down to the idea that you want someone else to open the field, whether it's like a Viscous punch or a charge, before you commit that ult. Because we saw what happened last time Wraith did hit for.
Yeah, Wraith, I think, just doesn't want to give up the souls that they have as well, right? Especially given the fact that you have that teleport. That means that anybody all the way on the side of Park could just pop up right next to you and turn that from a 1v1 into a 2v1. And given that I don't think Wraith is at the point right now where you're 100 to zeroing somebody even off the back of the ultimate, that means that fights are going to be a little bit more extended. That means that there's a lot of danger. Yamato going to pop ult, speaking of which. Let's see what happens here. Moan Krill destroyed early in this one. Buff Enjoyers make it out like bandits here. They're all of a sudden 6k souls up, and now they look poised to walk away with this one. Cabal need to find a way back in.
Yeah, Moan Krill went in. That forced out the ultimate because he didn't want to get grabbed. And now we've got a dome follow-up, but that is not a fun pinball event to attend unless you've got a Haze trapped in there with you. Both Abrams and Viscous down for 30. This is going to be a push on the Walker.
Yeah, and this is a great call by Cabal to bring things right back in. This is the reason why we have rarely seen a Kelvin make it past the draft phase here, Pigeon, because when you can set things like that up and you can continue to distend the value and lead that your carries have, this can go easily in favor of Cabal. Pocket going to be picked off on a little bit of an overpush here. I think that the rest of Cabal are all right, though, and with that in mind, it's just going to be reconnoitering a rebuild, maybe catching out a little bit of an overpushed Wraith. Visca's going to try to come in here for the save. Will be able to cube and get Wraith to safety. Now Viscus taking a little bit of damage, is also going to try to walk this one right back, and Buff and Joyers, they seem to want to take this fight. Haze nowhere near this one. That means it is time for the paradoxical swap as an engage from the side of Buff and Joyers, and they will be able to pick out the Shiv by doing so. Now wrapping around the far side, Infernus worryingly low here, trying to find an angle in with their abilities, but they will get nothing. Buff and Joyers with a pick of 2, so close to the mid boss, could just bring this game totally into their favor, as now Bebop is dropping bombs. Wraith is going to get picked off, but now with 3 members of Cabal down, I think that the Sapphire Flame is perfectly happy to rain down Hellfire with Bebop on this vantage point, using that laser beam to take out another one. Mo and Krill and Haze, the last 2 left up, and I think Haze so far away from the core of this fight, they're just going to have to wait and see what Buff and Joyers want to do with this lead.
And Paradox enabling a lot of that, I think. You know, the way it began, the fish kill and then the follow-up, and now the lead into the big boy objective. Now, Haze is rotating in with 18k net worth, but you may notice a lack of an ultimate to work with here. Still on cooldown, won't be there quick enough. Infernus is going to have that opportunity, though. Combustion coming in a few seconds, but is it going to be too delayed? They try to jump in, but Rejuvenator is going to be grabbed by Buff and Joyous.
No miracle play this time. Buff and Joyers are going to grab the Rejuvenator and more, as we do see the follow-through fight. It looks like Cabal are actually able to wipe out multiple members of the blue team, and that means that we aren't going to be getting the most value out of this Rejuvenator. It's mostly just going to be used for them to come back from the base quicker. Good stuff by Cabal, seeing that that was still an opening there, and they're going to be able to scrabble back a soul lead off of that.
Yeah, I think, Kelvin just coming in on that delay. Sure, there's not the big boy objective, but the fact you strip half the team, actually more than half the team, right? It's just Abrams, the only one left now with the Rejuvenator, is big here. The soul gains would have been nice if there wasn't just so many lives lost here. So pretty much everything's still about balance here. Looking at the bigger picture, we do have to start thinking about those big ults down the line, but that is an insanely important pick. Haze, overextended, farming on the enemy side of the map, down for 30.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure what led to that call, but sometimes you just chase the souls, right? Sometimes you just want to get another wave jammed into the tower and whatnot, and we see what the outcome of that is. This is going to be open season for Buff and Joyce to try to push right back, and we see that gold lead pancake flip-flops one way or the other. This is an incredibly tight game going towards that 20-minute mark, where we can really say we are deep into a game of Deadlock, and it could be anybody's pickup one way or the other as death timers continue to extend. Those mistakes are going to be proving more and more fatal.
Love what they're doing with the urn right now on the side of Cabal. Just keeping it far back there, not giving it over. Obviously, they know they can't press in right now. They're a bit worried about the big team ults, right? You've got to be worried about the Google. You've also got to be worried about that Hyper Beam. We've just seen how impactful it could be, and if your positioning's wrong for just a second, it can be the end of you. So I think we're just going to keep seeing Cabal pull that urn back and not try to cash in on it.
100k milestone going to be crested by both teams here. We once again have to, I think, focus a little bit about how well distributed Cabal's gold is. It means that I think they're still going to be ready and raring to take a fight, particularly if they could get a pick on a premier member of Buff and Joyers. Wraith and Yamato both standing pretty as the strongest members of their team, but also 2 characters that we have seen so far get picked throughout the course of this game. Now, I think they may have learned their lesson from the situations, but I really hope that they play a little bit more with the rest of their squad here. Otherwise, I think Cabal could easily walk away with this.
I think you want the Paradox skill. The Abrams is a little bit more tanky, a little bit more annoying. Wraith is pretty stacked, and then of course Yamato has that get out of jail free card to get the ultimate off. So we've seen Paradox be pretty pivotal in this series so far. Even in this game, we've seen some sick initiations. It's probably the freest form of initiation that Buff and Joyce have.
I would agree with that. I think that Paradox will continue to be a core member of the team to really push back against that identity of team fighting that I've been kind of hammering home with Cabal here. That being said, right now, it's mostly just a matter of farming up and looking for that next big vulnerability. The ultimate point of this is that even if there are preferable members to take down, you are going to kill anybody that oversteps their boundaries, right? And at the end of the day, I think that even at this high level of gameplay that we've been seeing here out of Deadlock Core, that is still often what is deciding games.
Kelvin looking for that drop-off opportunity, but they are waiting here. Hyper Beam from the skies immediately has to be cancelled out there, and the swap's going to come in. They do drag one back behind enemy lines. Paradox able to escape themselves here, but not quick enough. They get caught before they get out. Pocket, in the meantime, will also go down. A 1-for-1 exchange, but now it looks like it's going to favor Cabal, as there is no Hyper Beam, no Bebop to be present here. Fisk is now dead. Follow-up is going to be going on through, looking for the Abrams kill. He might be able to get out of this, but there is no shot they can now contest the Earth.
That is heartbreaking. Buff and Joyer's a little bit of an overstay here. Wraith trying to just right the ship and bring it right back, but unfortunately doesn't have the damage with which to do so. Now is getting chipped away by the Infernus poke. So that is going to be a clear and defined victory for Cabal to drop off this urn and continue to profit here.
And well, around that urn situation, right, you kind of want those big slams, especially for the follow-up team objective, which we know is at least, what, 3 minutes away almost still, so they'll at least be the big ultimates, but I feel like this Abrams is still struggling to find that big impact. I mean, Bebop, I love this idea, the Hyper Beam, but realistically, if you don't have anyone to initiate, it doesn't find that power, right? It feels like you need to be the one grabbing some of these hooks before you can think about the DPS.
Yeah, it really does feel like there's so much of a responsibility on Buff Enjoyers as Bebop to get a crucial hook to start the fight off, because even something like Paradox Ultimate is more risky than just raw dogging a hook and killing a squishy member of Cabal, right? And because that's the case, what we see right there is Buff Enjoyers, even though they got an engage on their terms, what it ultimately cascaded into was one trade that then meant the rest of Cabal's team fighting composition was able to take it away.
So I believe they marked it earlier. That 23 and 10 coming up from Yamato wasn't what you get in your pub game. It wasn't them telling you how good they are and how many kills they've got. It was just them marking the time. So we are under 2 minutes away from mid-boss coming back into the picture. Positioning-wise, you can see a little bit of spread coming in from Buff and Joyers. They are taking advantage of the teleporter to take out the ancient stacks here. So it's going to yield them more resources, but you need every little bit you can get. We know how Hazes get at this stage. Like, there is no one on that team that is going to compete with her acceleration when it comes to soul gathering.
One thing to note is that I feel like in that last fight, Kelvin wasn't the big playmaker, but as things centralize once again and the mid-boss comes up, where now everybody's kind of going to be clustered around a singular objective, that wombo combo that is still possible to come through that we've seen once already, where Haze bullet dances inside of the freeze ball, means that I think Cabal once again has just another weapon in the arsenal that, frankly, Buff Enjoyers doesn't really have much of an answer to unless they're the ones engaging on their own terms and getting picks to start fights off.
Well, there might be someone to force a fight soon, and I love the initiation here from Cabal. They're on the move, taking initiative, looking for kills. They move into on Paradox. Looks like Swap is still available, but no good opportunity to use it here. Finally, he's going to come out, trying to play Jukaroo with the wall. Will allow time for the Hyper Beam setup, but the damage already done. They're one down. Bebop gets stunned trying to escape, down to half HP. The team is trying to rotate, but I think it's too little too late here. Stuns from Moan Krill. Good lockdown in position. Abrams not able to be that front line again. Ultimate not going to be able to be used here. He's dead. Viscous not able to save anyone because he arrived so late in the situation. And it feels like we've just got a Congo line of death out of Buff Enjoyers.
And this is the perfect place with which to take a fight like this. Cabal so deep in enemy territory. They're going to knock down a walker. They're going to rotate over. They're going to crack the base of Buff Enjoyers if they aren't careful. And what a way to put themselves definitively in the lead here. They're, in fact, going to move all the way back over here, and the Amber Hand is going to start off the mid-boss in earnest.
Now, when I make myself some ice cream, I like to take that syrup and squeeze it over once, then squeeze it over twice, and then 3 times, because I just love the sweetness of it. And that is exactly what you just saw out of the side of Cabal. They get double walker now into the mid-boss, and the contest is not going to be strong here. Buff Enjoyers know it. They do not have those cheeky shenanigans. No Paradox in position to do anything. No Abrams ults coming. They're just going to have to swallow it up and deal with the damage done.
Wraith is on a deep play into the enemy base, trying to take down both shrines. We'll be able to pick up one, but the stun from attempting to attach onto the zip line means that they are just going to donate a free kill over to a team that has just claimed the Rejuvenator and is looking ready to push once again.
Yeah, I can just imagine Wraith singing because I'm in too deep, and you're never getting out there. I mean, it's a bold play. I like the idea of them just trying to take advantage of the rough map situation, but now you kind of create an even rougher dynamic. Going down like that, not really getting any big key objective, now your team's going to have to shrink. They're going to have to play a little bit more defensive of the map in a situation where you need to try and find these picks before it turns into a big team fight.
Yeah, like, you could say, oh, a shrine, that's pretty big, actually. That can open with a patron, but that means that if you want to continue to play on that game plan, you are going to have to go and donate yourself once again to try to take down that other shrine in order for the strategy to have any value whatsoever. Because usually, you're just sweeping through taking these shrines once the base falls in general. But there's only one set of Guardians down, and I think Buff and Joyers will be able to benefit from that, as Mo and Krill is going to have their ultimate interrupted by the big stomp from the Walker, and so while that means no kill for the Cabal off the back of that, they will pick up another one of these big soul packages and another flex slot.
Paradox might be in trouble. Haze is hunting right now, looking for a target. Maybe slightly overextended, but they are on top of him right now as Paradox being brought low. Dome is going to get committed here to keep things safe, to split up the fights. That means there's no goo ball going around. Haze with the bullet dance to the backside, able to find the elimination onto Bebop, and they're not done yet. They hunt for more. Yamato gets brought down, Shiv down the high ground to force the full retreat. Both Guardians dead, and the keys to the base have been given to Cabal.
And this should honestly be enough. We're at the point where the death timers are so long that as long as you have a wave, Cabal are going to be able to melt through these shrines and the patron as well. And so with them opening up upon this base, Buff and Joyers have maybe one chance left for them to be able to save this game. But with the Rejuvenators available, Cabal are happy to just push all the way and try to make sure that we go to a grand finals of a 1-to-1 count.
It's perfect, right? Mo and Krill's about to have that stun again. Only half the team is up, so who's going to be tanking it? Who's going to take the shot to the face and not come out alive? Poke comes into the high ground from Wraith. Needs to shift away fast here. We're about to see the big exposure point. Patron now on the ground, and they see the opportunity to end. A full commitment in by Cabal to get us to a game 3. It's going to be 1-1. The fact that we're like, oh, you picked a sniper. We're going to pick like a pseudo sniper with... Do it.
And we will see very soon how these lanes are going to shape up. It looks like right now it's Vindicta and Haze versus Viscous and Paradox, which was not a dynamic that I was expecting coming out of Cabal, but I kind of like the space control that is going to be provided by both the Paradox and the Viscous here. That being said, there were still a lot of farming opportunities available for this Haze to start getting that advantage early, particularly if they can do enough damage to allow for the Vindicta to find high spots in the lane. Across the rest of the map, things are looking pretty standard. No crazy rotations just yet, but every time I say that, we get some shenanigans, particularly out of the Abrams in the hands of Cabal.
It's interesting because I thought maybe the Vindicta and Haze was about like setting them up in the location that one could just rotate out to the outer lane. But they're just locking into this 2-on-2, and I feel like Viscous is going to be the ultimate bully in that situation. The good news is at least I think the Grey Talon's going to have a happy time here, right? Because he did get to lane with the Ivy, which will be your protector.
Well, already we are seeing that push advantage come through for the Cabal. Viscous able to jam towards that tower, clear out waves for the time being. Wraith going worryingly low here. We'll have that little bit of cover fire here with the card to bring Mo and Krill to the danger zone as well. And so they are going to keep things relatively stable here all the way in that far left lane, as now Great Talon's getting encroached upon by that Lash whip.
Okay, well... So I'm thinking about the way that you want to like lane this. Like Shiv, we talked about the front line. One thing that I think is nice is that Grey Talon can pivot away from the IV that we said shouldn't be the biggest threat at range, maybe to the Abram lane. So it's almost like you do have this Grey Talon in a situation where if he doesn't like the lane, he has his tank next door that he can shift over to, right? So I do quite like that. But it looks like we are getting the bail point. Haze is shifting now over towards the Wraith lane. It looks like they were trying to catch them out overextended. They will fail to find it. Jumps in, gets the wallop, and just enough HP left after that Guardian switch to walk away alive.
What great balancing of that Guardian aggro and pressure, as now Cabal are going to lose another member in the form of Grey Talon. Pocket going to happily profit off the back of that one. Wraith was also forced out of that lane on the far left side, has to just relocate off of the zipline zoom. It's now Vindicta. It's taken below half health here. Has to be careful as Paradox is once again getting encroached, using that grenade early to just a little bit more damage. Sleep as a response here. We're going to see what that turns into. Looks like Paradox was far enough away from the zone of influence for that to not turn into a whole lot for the side of Buff and Joyers.
Yeah, and it is the one you want to go after, by the way. Like, in this lane, you kind of just need to keep the Paradox low, because if you go after the Viscous, he just tends to have a bit more sustainability. He's more of a bully in these early phases, whereas Paradox, I think, needs 1 or 2 items to really start to drill the damage out. Things like basic mags, the headshot booster is insane with that 5-burst gun. So I like the choice of pressure there to keep him on the back foot. But yeah, Grey Talon just not having a great time here, but anything is better than the experience Wraith is coming into. Like, giving Mo and Krill that type of edge is interesting on that lane, because both of them are your stun initiators for these ganks.
And one of the big tests regarding the zone of influence that Mo and Krill has early has been passed by buff enjoyers with flying colors, in my opinion. Because sometimes you see Mo and Krill's over-chasing, unable to really get value off their one ability as well. And they go too deep in enemy territory and get popped for that early because of it. But here, like, that's clearly not the case. They got great support on their side as well, and that's been paying dividends so far. Now, Cabal have been able to hold steady, even with a few people dropping on their side. They are even on that soul count. We do see the bailout coming through from the Viscous, saving the Paradox there, but that is a worryingly low laner, and I wonder if that's going to turn into a full back.
I think they're going to be fine with that, because what happened there is they both stacked for the splatter from Viscous, so he just kind of returned double the damage their way. It's a very glass cannon-y type approach they have to take on this lane. We're even seeing them prioritize a lot of vitality-based items there. You can see free green already in for the Vindicta, because they understand that this is going to be more of an attritional lane than a burst lane.
Mm-hmm. Now, Abrams, all the way there on Park, does have full push here with a set of minions to try to take down that tower. That forces the Pocket and the Lash to rotate all the way over to that far side, leaving Ivy alone. It looks like Shiv isn't going to try to force something under tower with the Great Talon, though. Instead, they are just going to rotate over to match a 2v2 all the way in purple. So things remain pretty calm overall, and very surprisingly enough, even between these two teams' vision.
Whoa. Maybe not for long. Affliction does come in. Shivers is being brought a little bit low, but nice space created there by the Abrams. So kind of a wasted ult here. It's at least going to force him home, but that wasn't really what you were trying to seek for here, right? Like, there's no clear objective follow-up. So instead, they're going to try to turn it into a winner by rotating towards the Grey Talon. Stun on the other side is going to be good enough. Mikhail gets brought down there. Nice moves coming in from the Wraith, and follow-up kills as well, as we're also going to now see Grey Talon going down.
Yeah, I do wonder if that Cosmic Veil had some kind of play into that stun, not necessarily cascading into a whole lot, but Wraith, got to think they're lucky stars that they got out of that one. It didn't turn that into a pretty favorable fight. As right now, we got a deep fight right behind this big spire. Abrams able to keep the majority of their health advantage alive here. They are just going to back off and reset back to a 2v2 lane. Lash worryingly low, may just have to give up this tower.
Yeah, that was sick as well. I think you would have seen a lot more burst damage coming through from Abrams, but unfortunately it didn't align well with the reload, right? He's out of bullets there. So a definite kind of thing for maybe you to be worried about if you're something like a Pocket. You're not as safe as you sometimes think, because sometimes when you just throw out that cloak, you become very predictable. Normally you don't want to be getting this close, but with this type of hero you need to. It's going to be jumping now. Good drag back by the Lash. Dash across, and the slice and dice turnaround. It's going to be a drop in favor of the Shiv. Still alive on the side. Pocket not able to get the trade. And it is going to be Pound Town coming out from the Abrams.
And not a moment too soon for Shiv to stabilize in that fight. And now Abrams is going to be able to hand off that pressure and aggro, continuing to walk those minions towards the walker, as Shiv is happily going to make their way out of there. And this is a great set of players to have an advantage right now. Cabal are unfortunately going to drop Paradox right there, but the fact that you have that full 5k across the board for the Abrams, the Shiv, the Viscous, and the Paradox means that they are well prepared for a big fight here in just a little bit to define the contours of this early game.
Yeah, the liability really is the Grey Talon, right? But you may have noticed that's starting to change a little bit. Yes, 2 deaths, but still at 4.1k. That's because it's become an idle lane, right? Ivy is not going to really stop a Grey Talon from getting CS here. They need some sort of rotation. But when you think about the heroes that are viable for it, right? Like, outside of your Mo and Krill, you don't have that immediate jump that can stop him from just taking flight and getting out.
Yeah, my honest take on the situation is, yeah, right now, Great Talon is lagging a little bit. We'll need a farm up to be relevant, and certainly needs the farm to be a valuable character in this game. But, you know, I would take the Shiv at 6k any day if it means that my Great Talon isn't doing much early game.
Yeah, and you know, there's ways that you can catch up. We've said that there's a lot of heroes that can kind of enable him to still get his burst damage out. The charge shots are not to be slept on. At this point in the game, just a guided owl also is a very big present and able threat, especially when you consider that some of the heroes on the side of Buff and Joys don't tend to scale into raw health too quickly, such as the Haze and the Vindicta.
Got our double man rotation here, the Pocket and the Ivy, cresting over into Greenwich, and we're going to see if that's going to lead to anything. Viscous and Shiv pushing pretty far up on this fight. Could spell disaster for Cabal if they aren't careful. Vindicta on a flight path, looking for an angle here, eventually just going to disengage, and it looks like at the end of the day, that's about the calmest way that I've seen a four-man negotiated by either side, clearly respecting one another here.
Yeah, and kind of a fragile state as well for Buff and Joys that they've got out that so cleanly, considering Haze was low HP all the way back home, right? Like, cooldown-wise, there was maybe some faults you're worried about. You also now get the Google out of the way. So I think this might be the point where we see Buff and Joys try to make some moves now that there's not as much lockdown for them to worry about.
Right now, I'm liking the fact that Cabal have brought Great Talon back up to level with the Vindicta. I think that's the real litmus test, because you don't want one side or the other able to play the poke game while the other team feels like they're in a scramble state to force past the poke into an engage. So with either side kind of having their sniper lag behind, which I'll be honest was a little bit expected given the draft, I think that I'm pretty happy with the state of this game going deep for either of these teams. Right now, we do see the Lash jump in, trying to turn this into more. Paradox Mirror coming out to try to buy time, but eventually they will fall. Traded back for the Haze, as now Great Talon has to try to get out of dodge here, as we see a further push and approach from the Cabal onto Buff Enjoyers. But it looks like right now, things are about to even out after just an even trade.
Yeah, the way that was developing, that is actually the best you could ask for. That was a full encirclement all the way coming in from the side of Buff Enjoyers. So Cabal done a great job of dodging death there. So things are going to reset. We've always got that pressure on the outer lanes. There's always something that's going to have to now be attended to, but I think that's where you want to send the Haze, try to keep her away from these threats. I think what you want to do is if you have to bring one of these kind of more scaly-based carries into the equation, bring the Vindicta that can actually capitalize on those assassinates more easily.
Right now, you look at this soul count, about even once again as we press over the 10-minute mark, and that means that mid-boss is available. As I said, I believe that this one is going to go the distance, but we also know how volatile any Deadlock game state is at this point in time. All you need to do is farm, not extend, and not give up a free kill one way or the other, because that can turn into so much. In many cases, we've seen that both Cabal and Buff Enjoyers are willing to take a 6v5 if they think their positioning is good, even if they are down a member due to a pick or something else. In many cases, it has led to turnarounds once again. In many cases, in very delayed situations, as now we are in fact going to start to see Cabal pick off Haze. Moan Krill trying to work as a defense here. Now, in fact, just going to be brought in with a paradoxical swap, and that means it's going to be a 2 for nothing. And Cabal will be able to use this as a push opportunity.
And they're just timing that perfectly. The uppercut from the Viscous, followed up by the slice of dice, just erased that hero. You wouldn't think there was one that you would have thought was going to be a creep. Meantime, we have got some pressure coming in on that flank. Poke in on to the tier 2. We've almost seen them getting through that, but now the counter initiation coming in. Wall's going to be dropped. Affliction is going to be thrown out, and an evacuation coming through. Buff and Joy is able to follow through, though. We'll find the counter hydration. Looks like Shiv is out of position and out of time as well. Not going to be able to fight back. A 2 for 1 that they will hopefully, happily rather take.
I should probably just stop assessing the current state of any of these games, because KP, every single time that you start to see someone edge over the other, it is brought right back in kind. And once again, a lot of that comes down to that lag time that you have after a deep engage where you got a few kills. Now the question is, can you get back out? And because the death cooldowns aren't super high right now, in many cases Cabal are able to rally, Buff Enjoyers are able to rally in kind as well. And so we are currently looking at a state of the game where Cabal is up, but not by a whole lot. And we see how quickly that could spin right back around in favor of Buff Enjoyers.
And they've shown so much respect on this Urn situation, not committing it yet. But now that we've got Listic in position on this Lash, he has got his ultimate available, so there is a form of initiation to kind of create that space. So Urn drop-off's going to come in. Great Talon's already forced to use all the stamina just to roll away. And that is not a very healthy initiate in the form of an Abrams. I don't think you can look for this fight. Spirit Owl's going to come through, maybe do a little bit of damage, and I don't think they're in position to follow us up. Vindicta might be a follow-up. Somehow they managed to find the Moan Krill in the mess there.
Wow.
And Vindicta is going to get hunted for in the end. So they turn it into a 2-0. Admittedly, Earn-going kind of evens it up, so things are going to remain balanced. But with a hero advantage now, we might be seeing a push onto the Walker.
Lash in a lot of trouble, totally caught out here, and that means that yet another one is going to fall. Cabal, I think, now getting the best of that cross-map exchange there with the Earn in contention. One of the things to note is just how hard that fight was to assess for either side. Cabal clearly knows something that we didn't by going in there, picking up 3 kills, basically uncontested, and bringing it back into their favor. They're now up almost 10,000 souls.
Yeah, it's quite crazy, right? At the start, I didn't think it was going to be enough to gap close, but apparently they already had Mo and Krill in custody in a way there, right? And then the follow-up over the top. I mean, Vindicta, one of the downsides is when you make your escape, your first instinct is to hit flight, and that can be a negative when you've got no one to cover it. So great utilization of their abilities there. Cabal able to get that follow-up objective, and now moving ahead with almost a 10,000 soul lead.
And look at how it's distributed. The thing that I'm really worried about is the fact that Mikhail is at 8k on Vindicta. And this isn't a Mo and Krill situation where you can talk about, hey, you got some value going for those ults and whatnot. Vindicta not doing damage means that Vindicta doesn't have a role in this game. Maybe get a solid stake or something like that. But to get in the air to find the vantage point to do so, I think is going to get punished by Cabal, who luckily has been able to buoy Grey Talon just a little bit more, up about 2,000 in favor, as now Abrams maybe in a little bit of trouble here, fighting face-to-face with both Haze and Ivy. Great stun up against the wall. Knows that it's time to get out. Discretion, the better part of Valor, but there's a knockup. Ivy able to turn it right back around, and down goes the tank.
Not just that, he used his ultimate. Look at the cooldown bar up there.
Oh my goodness.
Perfect interception. I love that from Ivy. You commit the Stoneform so high in the air, he wouldn't have even seen it. He thought it was an easy get-out-of-jail-free card. Now, instead, the follow-up means there's no sort of big team fight initiation. Swap in the meantime comes in, into the execution, and now another Walker on the iron sight targeting for Buff Enjoyers. This lead that was built for Cabal has been shrunk completely.
These highlight plays from Buff Enjoyers are just not turning into an advantage overall in this game, and that has got to be incredibly frustrating. Shiv going to be caught out here. Mo and Krill channeling the full ult on top of them, but with the ability to just defer some of that damage, it still looks like the Shiv is perfectly happy to continue to perpetuate this fight, as now it's Wraith in a ton of trouble from the aerial assault. Gonna be taken down here, and that means finally Buff Enjoyers may have gotten their head above water, but they need to push this advantage further if they really want to make a comeback here. Grey Talon ultimate only gonna find a little bit of poke damage onto 2 members of Buff Enjoyers, and that means that the Cabal are just down a member with nothing to do.
What just happened to the net worth as well? You know, I looked a second ago and Vindicta's like 8k and then Haze is 10. And they're starting to catch up, right? The farm is kicking in and we were a little bit worried. Look at the laning phase. I'm like, okay, so what are these guys going to do? Because they're laning together and I feel like we've basically got a support kind of role for the Haze. But just one fight is all it takes, right, to start scaling. And when we think about that scaling factor, the mid game is still scary. I think there's a lot of potency in Cabal, but I don't think now that the way this is caving out, they want to go late. And Lash in with a grab, on the 2, pulls them back. Follow-up stun's going to be in there. Affliction is going to be committed, but the roll comes through, and they're going to try to send it deeper. Paradox is down in the meantime, and it looks like it's going to be only an escape coming from Viscous, but the hunt is on. They're looking for the pocket kill, and there is simply no escaping this Abrams. He tries to teleport out. Low HP will barely get away from this. Such a deep dive. And yeah, now when you look at the tail end of it, how is it that we are not seeing a net worth league developing off of these fights?
It is absurd to think about, but what I'm a little bit worried about is that if both of these teams are as on even keel as the net worth is showing here, PK or KP, what I am worried about is the fact that Cabal is just starting to run away with a ton of these fights, even ones that are favorably started by Buff Enjoyers. That was Listic doing a textbook Lash engage, and it doesn't matter.
No, it's crazy to think about in these situations, right? Like, you know, I think the walls also coming in from the Paradox kind of like ruins their initial burst when they get the stun for the pull-up. But the thing that I'm thinking about is like the longer we go, I'm just keeping an eye on this scalability of damage. I think Leffa is anchoring himself as a key component of this mid-game, which brings me hope. I think he's really good at farming, but it's kind of weird. I feel like this series, Wraith in general, hasn't scaled the way we would have been expecting in these games.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what it is, and you can kind of see that represented in their kill count, right? A 1, 2, and 4 scoreline for a Wraith is surprising to see, given the fact that they have that identity as a solo lane pusher, but for the most part, Leffa has been forced, alongside all the other Wraith players, to just kind of work as a team fighter, max out that ultimate, and hopefully get multiple suspends off the telekinesis to really open things up.
No, may jinx it, but we do have a slight soul lead starting to develop here. And the spread
Never analyze any part of this game on that front. That's what I've learned throughout the course of this final series.
But like when they go to the shop, everyone opens a book, and books are very analytical. I've got to at least try, you know.
There we go. There we go.
Found the pattern. But no, looking at the state of play, I think we are going to be seeing a big fight around the mid boss. That seems the next key objective. Usually by the 100k mark, both teams are thinking about it. We've got a lot of fellas looming here, actually, on both sides. Pocket and Paradox both kind of eyeballing each other.
I am interested to see what the capacity for a start and turn is on things like the mid boss, because you see that relatively frequently in the course of a League of Legends game, right? People will bait with an engage onto the Baron Nashor, which then turns into them just turning around and trying to start a team fight if they feel like they're ahead and are able to do it. Here, I feel that maybe it's too committal to go for mid boss, and the steal potential is too high to ever try to coin flip a fight like that.
Abrams does discover that they are all chilling on Cloud9 here. Guided Out is going to come in. Pretty much just a scouting out at this stage. I don't think they're fishing for a kill. They just want the info. Nice hit under the Vindicta to knock her out of the air. And they are starting to invade centerfold here. Now that rooftop is going to be important if you can hold on to it. But it seems like Buff and Joys don't feel as if they can hold this area.
Overall, I do think that Cabal, with that vantage point, are pretty comfy just sitting here and seeing how Buff and Joyce tries to engage. And it looks like the Amber Hand is going to try to call their bluff and look for something here. Ivy Bomb not going to find a whole lot, a little bit of damage on the 4 separate members, but that isn't going to be a killing blow or anything like that. Viscous half health, though, might be in trouble. Shiv also has to get their way out of dodge. Haze heading back towards the base for the time being. Catch a wave means that this is going to be a fight that neither team really wants to take at this point.
This is really difficult, actually, for Cabal, because you saw what they tried to do. They tried to inject themselves in the central building, because if they try to take it from a wider angle, that high ground is cursed for them, right? They're up against a Vindicta. They're up against the barrage spam that comes out from Pocket. You know, on their side, how do they really gap close that? You don't want to have to commit an Abrams ult just to get up there. Great Talon might be the only way, but in the meantime, it looks like Viscous being targeted upon here is going to be brought low enough. 1 HP, they just need that finishing touch, and the cube surely won't be able to protect him, but the stun's gonna come out.
No way!
Krill? Are you kidding me? Paradox goes down instead. Somehow Viscous on 1.5 HP. The slam is getting ready. Abrams able to get the stun follow-up here. Lash able to escape. In the meantime, Vindicta being brought low. Great Talon trying to create that space for his team. It's a 1-for-1 trade, but immediately gets erased. Now we're free. Make that a 4-to-1 here. At the second end of this fight, Buff and Joyous can do no wrong.
That is the more depressing version of Saving Private Ryan. It was Saving Private Viscous, and at the end of the day, you lose everybody, including the Viscous, for it. Lash here for the final alley-oop to get the full team wipe. Buff Enjoyers losing 1 for the price of 6. That means that mid-boss is all theirs.
It's one of those type of games where like you want to go back and replay it 3 times over because there were so many discombobulated elements there, right? The Savior Hero syndrome is so true. Viscous, you expect him to have to do it, but you know, they're Mo and Krill, the perfect intercept, forcing the cube in an undesirable situation, and now the ultimate follow-up, the ultimate punishment, what they've been lurking around that tower and waiting so long for, Rejuvenator, now in the hands of Buff Enjoyers, an appropriate name for what they just got.
What I will say here for both of these teams is that I think there's plenty for them to be putting on their highlight reels. You can just cut it off before the end of the actual game, because the Cabal was doing fantastically, had so many well-coordinated fights. It's just, you know, the clip's got to be about 30 seconds long before you see what happens for the rest of the 6v6.
Absolutely, I mean, you just see how quickly it can snowball, right? The get out of jail situation doesn't feel good either. Like, how do you easily escape this? You think about the heroes that Cabal are working with. You know, Wraith sometimes we say, oh yeah, he's got teleport, easily gets away. It's what happens afterwards. Shiv, not the best at escaping as well. If you haven't got your ultimate, Viscous is probably going to be sold downriver, and Abrams doesn't want to have to ult to get out. He's usually ulting to get in. So, it definitely feels like the type of fights that can snowball really quickly against Cabal if they start to fold at all. So, what I'd like to see now that we've got a little bit of breathing time as the pause come out, I think we've got a little bit of a technical issue. It feels horrible, and your instincts say get in the base and stay in the base. But I think you need to find some sort of grab, and maybe this is a good start. Stun comes out, beautifully executed by the Paradox.
Love that. Taking one of the Rejuvenators off the board, taking a member of Buff Enjoyers who wanted to present this United Front to make the most out of this buff, means that Cabal will be able to stem at least a little bit of the bleeding here. And we've talked about how gold gaps can kind of become a myth, At this point in the game, it certainly is a pretty substantial lead for Buff Enjoyers, but we've seen also that dividing and conquering, making sure that a team desperate to really make the most out of the lead that they have overextends and you could punish them could just be enough to put things right back in favor of Cabal and bring them to a victory here.
It's definitely lining up that way. I mean, the scalability point I think is being reached as well. This is where I expect the Haze to kind of accelerate quicker than really anyone can compete with. It is reaching that several slots complete. Usually when we see about, I say 22k and above, that's when she becomes the most goldly farmer in the game. Ivy, once again, just going for these kind of scout ultimates, trying to get a feel for what the lay of the land is. If they only knew just how spread and vulnerable Cabal are, they might look to pounce. And they are moving in right now. Wraith seems to have been overextended here. Will just about get on the line before the trouble comes in.
Yeah, it looks like they had the teleport available to help stabilize that fight, but that's still going to be a walker picked up by Buff Enjoyers. And that opening up more of the space on the map for them to play with just means that you're continuing to further those advantages regarding farm. Paradoxical swap going to be used as the engage. We got a full-on 6v6 team fight going here as Paradox may have unfortunately put themselves in a sticky situation as Cabal are going to lose not only them, but the Shiv as well. And Buff Enjoyers once again will emerge with their head held high, besieging another walker.
This is the Lash that I've been waiting for, right? This tournament so far, I don't think we've had this good of a performance out of them. Those grabs are so pivotal. Now multiple fights in a row, just in the right position at the right time. They're baying out these savior abilities from Cabal a little bit too early before they're in a position to do anything about it. And now we're going to start to see that snowball. Jumps in, Guardians are being sniped onto. Abrams barely able to get Array alive. Might just about stay that way, but it's going to come at a cost. Flex slots now being unlocked, and not much of a base left over for Cabal.
One more shrine still available. Ivy going to get stunned here, but it's still not enough. Everybody on the side of Buff Enjoyers able to make it out of the base and cash out the gold lead that they have developed for themselves. Now cresting past the 25k mark almost. This is a worrying situation to be in. Cabal need to have a miracle at this point, I think, to really bring this back without Buff Enjoyers making a crucial mistake. And that's certainly possible, but these teams have proven time and time again that when they're in a situation when they're ahead, at this deep into the game with scaling members on their side, they have a watertight game plan.
Yeah, I do feel like as this continues on, we're getting maybe a bit more reliable DPS output in these fights from Buff Enjoyers, because I just noticed, I think that Grey Talon's gone for the Spirit build, right? So it's like, it's burst, but it's not consistent damage. Yeah, there you go. Heavy into the purple. So really, your left click here is primarily coming from the Wraith. Although we're seeing Abrams with a very big orange bar there, I don't feel like he's been able to remain deep for long to take advantage of that.
Headed to blue.
What I'm really sad about at this point is the fact that Grey Talon has done literally nothing.
Welcome to Grey Talon Games. This is
I wish that there was like a more like charitable assessment to have, but I really do feel like Cabal has been operating in a 5v6 scenario for a while now, especially as Mikhail has been able to bring back relevancy to this Vindicta pick just through solid farm.
Well, the earn drop-off just kind of consolidates that. Now 30,000 net worth lead. You can see they are eager for a fight. Defense is set up on the bridge, is going to be there for Cabal, but there's a rotation coming around. So I think the goal here, just kind of shove in the lanes, because whenever you shove in lanes, there's this cool concept in MOBAs around the idea, shove in the lanes and you force a reaction. And the whole idea is you don't even necessarily have to wait for the person to react. By them reacting in one location, they've enabled you to go elsewhere. So I think we're going to see all 4 lanes shove in. They're going to look for that wide spread that feels almost inevitable. Cabal essentially has to kind of babysit each other, moving across the map to avoid that problem.
And the problem about that is that a lot of these characters don't necessarily want to have to be in the hand-holding situation. We've highlighted Wraith time and time again, still the most fed member of Cabal, unable to make a real mark in this, and I'm unfortunately going to have to say my main is becoming the new Yamato
Abrams?
in this final game.
Oh no!
Oh,
Can he get away from this? I don't think
No,
that he
no!
escaped. The stake comes down. He has to charge away. Low HP. Cube's going to save him. Jump him by the pocket. Is going to have to retreat. Now, keep in mind, he didn't use the ultimate. This is big. They need that for a counter initiation, a follow-up. So, no severe damage done, but no big investments on either side.
That's that power of the last walker that Cabal has available, but that also is reflective of the fact that once that thing goes down, the map becomes even more open for buff enjoyers to roam across it with impunity, and Cabal will have to continuously play buddy-buddy with one another, rotate, play reactively, and that's not where you want to be to try to put a game of Deadlock away.
We have to keep in mind, I'm pretty sure Haze was nowhere near that fight. I saw her in the bottom right corner. She's just been farming, right? So that's how confident they are. It definitely shows in the...
Oh, no!
Oh, come
Oh,
on.
no.